Hello and welcome back. We are kicking things off here in Charters of Commerce with a starting steps video for Russia. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of Russia's flavor and some of the things that are unique to them, but we are going to primarily be focused on the reason for selecting Russia, which is we are going to try and use the subventions mechanic to completely dominate the trade of wood. Now, Russia is probably the best / second best, probably second best country for doing this, although they have a greater top end in terms of being really good for dominating the global market of wood, which was what a subvention is that we are going to subsidize the export. So we are going to pay to export more. This is going to drop the price in other people's markets, and us dropping our own price is going to allow us to export even more. And by pushing down the prices in other people's markets, we make it so that the business isn't that profitable for them. And so they won't build it, and so we can completely dominate that. This is the idea, and the reason why Russia is so effective is because if we take a look, we do have this Russian taiga forest modifier that is applying to a very large amount of our territory that is very, very wood dense for logging industry throughput. Now, the thing about throughput is you will tend to acquire a very large amount of throughput, and so additional marginal throughput that you get is not going to necessarily be that valuable. You can also notice we have enormous capacity for wood, 67, and you also have Tula has the absolute most, but ironically they don't have the Russian taiga forest modifier, so that's probably not as good as Yaroslavl. But the country that I think is probably best but doesn't have as good a top end is going to be the USA for the hardwood output bonus, because output bonuses are multiplicatively effective with throughput. As you get more throughput, a throughput bonus gets less effective. As you get more throughput, an output bonus gets more effective because they are effectively multiplicatively modifying each other. And even though it is just hardwood rather than all of the wood or all the entire logging industry, if you're stacking a bunch of bonuses to really specialize super hard, the output's probably going to be a little bit better. In terms of where we're starting, in terms of the global production of softwood, we have a 7.2K of production of wood. We are currently the second producer after Qing, which of course has an enormous amount that is getting produced from their subsistence farms. And so there's around 26K total wood being produced by these top members. And so we have roughly a quarter. And then if we take a look at the current buy orders that we are receiving, roughly a quarter of them are going to be from trade, where we have 1.1K buy orders. We are exporting wood out of our total buy orders of 4.4K. We are going to look to jam this trade center number up as high as possible so that by doing this, we can effectively produce a larger proportion of the world's wood. We also have new company mechanics, and we start with a colonial company in the Russian-American company, which incidentally is going to be a wood company, which works out perfectly for us. We are going to keep these guys in. I'm not 100% sure that it is optimal to keep these guys in, but we're going to focus on that, and we're going to play around a little bit with having one of these colonial guys rather than a standard company. They don't have a prestige good or a specialty prestige good for wood, but we might spawn one later. I'm not 100% sure how that works exactly. We're going to start off giving them monopoly rights so that they are going to be the only private people that can own these industries, or specifically the industry of the logging camp, because we want them to own it all, because we have this very important bonus where our companies are going to be giving us a very large amount of throughput. This again, multiplicatively effective with that hardwood output, and so by doing this, we are going to ensure that a higher density of our industries, or our logging camps specifically, are going to be owned by these guys. We can also give them additional industry rights where they will go after these other things. I think coal mines specifically is probably going to be what we eventually go for, and this is going to pair really, really nicely for us going, or with us going Lil Popco, which is going to be a tooling and iron workshop, and with these two, we will have the trifecta, or the trifecta plus. We will have tools, iron, coal, and also wood. So we will just have a very, very good setup with just two companies. But continuing on, they already have colonialization rights. That's what they're doing. That's what they're all about in Alaska here. For trade rights, this will allow them to build trade centers. I think in general, this is probably good to give out, but we want to control our trade centers a little bit more actively ourselves, and so we don't want the private queue constructing quite as many, and also they tend to buy a lot of these. We want them to buy the long camps early, so we're not going to go for trade rights very early on them. And also, investment rights is another one that I think is strong in particular. What it does is it allows your guys to make a regional company HQ, where you will use the local country's investment pool to pay for buildings that your company will own, and you are extracting value from your company. This is a kind of insane modifier, and there's going to be a lot of play with how to best exploit this. However, we are trying to maximize our global production of wood. If we get an investment company in China to make use of their enormous investment pool to just give us a bunch of free money, what's going to end up happening is we're going to build up a bunch of wood production in China, and our number is not going to look quite as good. So we will hold off on the investment rights as it relates to wood as well here. Speaking of trade centers, let's speak about them because they've gotten a major update. These are going to do trade, and they're going to do trade automatically. You can no longer manually put in routes. Instead, you can only put in routes, or routes will be put in automatically with your trade centers. We can see this one in Moscow is getting 2 import routes, one for silk and one for tea, and a rather large export route. That's 210 softwood. It is exporting, things are going out. I think that these import-export are reversed in the current version, the pre-release version we have this export price of 20, but it is saying that's the local price, and under export it says this, but I think this will be probably resolved by the time the game gets released, or I'm just misunderstanding it. Probably both. Bam. The truth hurts. But continuing on, we are doing trade automatically. And instead what the player has is a bunch of strategic levers that they can pull to facilitate trade in this way. We already talked about a little bit how with wood we can have this subvention where we can prioritize or pay extra for export, and in fact for now we'll just put on no tariffs, but also you can, for example, facilitate trade by increasing the number of trade centers. Trade centers also now can be privately owned, and you can see here our ownership is currently, they're all owned by financial districts here. They can be privately owned, and they can be profitable, and they use an input in merchant marine, which is going to be produced by ports. And so ports can also be privately owned, and so a lot of the automated levers that are reliant on private construction are going to be possible with trade centers. Trade centers can be produced by private industry, and ports can be produced by private industry, and they are also going to do something that is very, very significant here. In addition to being private and in such a way being automated, both in their, export, import, and also in their production and the facilitation of their inputs, beyond that, they create buy orders locally and sell orders locally. So when we are exporting wood here, we are getting local buy and sell orders. And this is pretty significant because what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to make wood way more profitable. And in fact, if we come in here to Moscow, we're going to notice some very, very interesting phenomena when we look at local prices. Here is this right here. This is our wood price in Moscow specifically. It is at a price of 10. Now, normally what happens if you are producing a bunch of wood in Moscow, which to be sure, we have logging camps at level 10, and we are producing nothing by soft wood. Here at the start of the game, that's a lot of logging camps to have. Normally what would happen is wood price would crash, and since wood price gets lower, this is going to make the building less profitable. If we take a look at our local price, though, our local wood price is actually lower, our market wood price is actually lower than the local wood price. And the reason for this is that we actually have a surplus that is going to be, in terms of a ratio, collapsing the price less, because if we take a look, the consumption of wood here, we have a normal kind of consumption of, let's call this 300, 400-ish from the tooling workshop, construction sector, furniture manufacturers. But on top of this, we have the local consumption of the trade centers, which are buying the wood in order to export it. This is really significant because this effectively allows you to undo the negative economic impacts of MAPI, which helps to facilitate trade, and it also helps to facilitate specialization. Now, in terms of specializing, an important note is a quarter of our buy orders for wood are from trade. So this means we can disproportionately add more wood. But also, this is going to bring back a very long-lost metagame from like 2 years ago in terms of Victoria 3 with regards to the undoing of MAPI, which is that you used to use decrees in a very kind of strange way, which is that you used to do one encouraged resource decree on the place that had the best resources for you. we will put that in Yaroslav for now. And you used to also use one encouraged manufacturing decree. And the reason why this became bad is because you would want your iron where you had your tools, and tools where you had your iron, because they fed into each other, and local prices and vertical integration is important. But as we see here, our price of wood isn't collapsing because we're overproducing it here inside of Moscow, because the trade center allows us to do this. And so, if we wanted to build a ton of wood in Moscow, it would remain profitable because the trade center would kind of prop it up. What the old metagame was to produce all your industry in one place, making use of the decree that would give throughput on all your industries for manufacturing, 20% throughput, and you would do the same for resources. You would produce them all, and you would specifically try and push economies of scale, and you would use trade to facilitate this. And so you would export tools so that you could produce more levels of tools, and you would also import kind of everything else, and you would export your raw resources as well. And the idea is you would push for economies of scale. Now, the reason we have chosen a Yaroslav is that this place has the absolute highest level of logging camps, and I know what you're going to say. No, it doesn't, generalist. That, of course, is down here in Tula. They have a higher level, but Tula doesn't get the throughput bonus. So Yaroslav is where we want to push it. If we take a look, we have 44 throughput already without having economies of scale. Once we have economies of scale, between the edict that we have down, or the decree we have down, the Russian taiga forests, and the throughput from economies of scale, every single one of our buildings will be worth 160% of a building. Now, it will also be wildly profitable as well. You can see here, half our input is actually on wages, despite tools being insanely expensive. When you increase throughput, you just increase the input goods and the output goods. You don't increase wages. And so what this will do is this will make the margin way more profitable. As the margin gets more profitable, it's way better for us to build the thing. And as we get more and more and build more and more and more of the thing, we push the price down, which is going to make it less profitable, but we can use trade to push the price back up. And this is what we're going to be doing. And the reason why we have decided to put it in Warsaw is that, okay, Warsaw is actually got decent resources, and we have kind of a bit of population. The old heuristic is you would just put it in wherever you have the most pop, but we also have a company to consider. And that company is a Lil Pop Rao & Co., which is going to give us tools, iron, steel, and is generally speaking kind of one of the better companies going into this patch, although with all the prestige goods and a bunch of stuff to think about, I really don't have a very good handle on this. But between this and the company we already have, we will have all the normal bases covered, and this really is going to feel extremely good. Tools, iron, steel, sure. Steel is a little bit less, but then also we are going to have wood, and remember, we can exchange some of our authority to add industry rights. We get a few of these, we get a few freebies, but we can add industry rights for coal mines. And so we will have wood, coal, iron, steel, and tools. And this is just going to feel absolutely tremendous for providing a base for us here in Russia. In terms of other Russia flavor, we also have the new Russia Limited company that is extremely strong. And on top of that, they have a prestige good. Now, the higher proportion of your goods that you're consuming that are prestige, the bigger a bonus you get from them, and this gives you additional throughput. And so, having a prestige good of iron is particularly powerful. And this might make Mavog actually a little bad. And so we might even go for this over Mavog. Not entirely sure yet, but we would be missing out on tools. However, it's possible that they have a tools upgrade in the same way that we can take the Russia-American company and we could add an industry right for coal. It's possible that they have one of these for tools specifically, and if they do, then that's perfect. And then we can even go fishing wharves if we so choose, and we will have an industry for a 3 out of kind of, or 3 of the best industries in terms of depeasanting, because they only cost 200 construction from the Russian-American company, and and then New Russia Limited covering the loud cars outside, and also covering, coal, steel, tools, and iron, and having the prestige good for iron. So that all seems very strong. But in terms of other Russia stuff that they're going on, I think that the most significant and noticeable thing about Russia is they just have categorically the best resources and the best states. Although the USA has a lot of good states, if you take the top 20 states and you maybe discount arable land a little bit because there are a lot of really good high arable land states, Russia probably has roughly a third of those. The kind of standout ones are Perm, which also has a bunch of oil that appears, Ural, which will have some gold that appears. You can see there's 2 here already. I think it goes up quite a bit higher than that. It's going to be quite significant. And also states like Baku, which has a massive whopping 240 oil that appears. There's just a ton of states that have iron and coal just generically. And as we kind of mentioned, we also have this entire wood going on here with the Russian wood forests. Now also, in terms of what we got, we also have a few unique things going on with our interest groups. We have the profitable estates, which is going to give more aristocrat investment pool contribution efficiency. Now, an unfortunate thing is that companies are always owned by capitalists, and so you can never utilize the aristocrat bonus with companies, and if you could, this would maybe make Russia a bit of an interesting pick for some sort of attempt to make agrarianism okay, but as it stands, this isn't going to be that big a standout, but it is something to keep an eye on. And then also the Orthodox Church has kind of the normal Catholic bonuses and malices as far as I recall, but it does have this Russian Orthodox Patriarchy, which is quite a nasty one in terms of them resisting you trying to pass a lot of stuff. Now, we are for this run going to play relatively standard and not do anything too crazy to overcome Russia's kind of negative situation, which is that they have really bad laws. And there's stuff you can do to trigger corn laws easier. You can isolate your market by, moving your market center to Dobruja, releasing a Besveria or giving it away, and then isolating your market capital, triggering corn laws. We're not going to do that. But also, corn laws is probably going to be a lot harder to trigger now because trade is automated, right? So you can't force in a bunch of trade routes in order to trigger corn laws, and so we are going to be stuck with a relatively backward system on traditionalism for some time, which is going to be quite painful for us, and is going to give us kind of a bit of something to work towards in a little bit more of a slower matter. Notably, the negative MAPI, though, the market access price impact, not as impactful now that we have trade centers that can partially overcome this, but this government dividends reinvestment is a little bit rough, as is also this huge malice to investment pool contribution efficiency. A huge advantage that Russia used to have that is no longer really very important is it used to really benefit from being adjacent for having land routes with a bunch of other countries, which used to be kind of the only really good way to facilitate trade. Notably, being adjacent to Qing was particularly powerful, especially because you could take these states and have them be connected and connect easier into Beijing and Shaanxi. Instead, now we have the world market, which as long as you're connected to the coast with a port, you can connect into, and also you can get access for someone else via agreement. And so one of these advantages is going to be gone for Russia. So, made a little bit of an audible, we are going to put down in Kharkov instead of in Warzawa and go for New Russia Limited instead, now that it only takes a Bessemer process. Maybe it always took Bessemer process and we forgot. We also put down a resource decree in Perm. I think Perm's a better spot for the resource decree than Yaroslavel. It's just that this is going to be good for highlighting specifically our wood idea, and so this is going to work out for us as well. We've also put down a road maintenance decree in there as well. Notably, authority is something you're going to be able to invest in companies to make them better, so that's going to be nice. We also put in a tax on liquor. Now, in terms of what we're doing diplomatically, we are improving relations with a whole bunch of people, and the reason for this is that we want to make various agreements. We can see that agreements are going to be something that is a little bit different. We want to make various agreements to make our trade have less friction. If our trade has less friction, we can specialize higher in wood, so that is going to be what we're going to be doing. And then for technology, we're going to have a relatively standard opening for atmospheric engine. Notably, Russia now does start with corporate charters and stock exchange, so that's good for them. But we are going to research this about up to 9K, but then we're going to do something a little bit not as standard. We're going to still go for railways, but we're going to go for early Bessemer process for the company, and then we're going to rush, even if it costs us a huge deficit, we're going to rush joint stock companies because we want to play a little bit more with the companies, and even if it's not necessarily optimal, we're going to go for it a little faster. Also worth noting is we did switch over, as one has to do, all of our things to better PMs, and so this is going to be nice for us, but now we don't have to import in order to fix this. This is going to auto-resolve because trade is all automated, and so while we have a silk shortage right now, we can expect to see that shortage get resolved. An important note is going to be where we put our interests is going to matter a little bit more here, and we have this interest here in Dixie, which may be a little bit surprising or interesting, but if we take a look at one of our trade centers, we will notice a bit of an interesting modifier that is going to be something that we have to play around to some degree, which is that if we take a look at our trade advantage, which is going to allow us to get better prices on our wood, which is going to be something that's important for us, we are getting a penalty for lack of interests in relevant markets here. And so having interests in the markets that are purchasing the wood is going to allow us to have a better price. And so this is going to be something that we care about, but we are going to be off and on our way. We're going to try and keep expansion, nothing too crazy. I think that we're going to avoid going for the meta spot of South Africa, Brunei, and instead just kind of try and expand in some normal kinds of areas, and we will also maybe play the great game a little bit and focus on Central Asia and have more of a historic kind of bent to our expansion. So let's go. A little bit of a small optimization here that's probably just a little gratuitous is we are weaving our first few construction sectors. The idea that Russia has relatively low SOL and literacy at game start, in addition to being on serfdom, is a little bit sticky or difficult to employ these up, and so this will give a little bit more time for them to employ up before we add an additional construction sector level. We're going to be cruising up and making a ton of money until we get there, running a little bit high taxes and of course the tax and low government wages, kind of some normal stuff. Also, just wanted to note that generally speaking, it's going to be better to be on iron frame building if you can import the iron, is kind of my opinion here. And importing the iron is something that you can definitely get done. And so what we're going to do is we're going to swap onto iron frame building here. And then knowing we want to import iron to this location in Kharkov, which eventually will be producing iron itself, we're going to put down a trade center, because wherever the iron imports, whichever trade center imports it, that's going to be where the iron is in terms of the sell orders. And so it's going to be preferable for these to be together. And so we will get started pushing trade centers in some spots. Once these clear out, we're going to be pushing logging in trade centers in various spots in order to kind of facilitate our early strategy here of forcing a lot of wood. So that's why we have these in Yaroslav. We get a little bit lucky with this petition because we were planning on going a dedicated police force into legal guardianship anyways. The idea being we were going to make the landowners super happy. That way they would interfere with us a little bit less as we try and get off of serfdom, and we would just have to, you know, still make it through the Orthodox Church, unique to Russia that they care about this, but this would make it a little bit easier on ourselves, and so either into homesteading or tenant farmers. But with this, we are going to get a bunch more satisfaction once we pass this, and so we are very happy to pay passing legal guardianship. Also, the infamy is from subjugating Persia. That's going to help us towards the great game. And so two Z's, a double Z's on the event. You might call it luck, I call it being handsome, but we get a nice event here for the Anti-British League. Now, to be fair, we have a decent role here for our gentry assembly to be rolling something we want, which is a protectionist here, although we have a 50% chance of rolling one of these, but when you're this handsome, that 50% chance is a 100% chance of getting dear Igor to be in charge, and we get this event, which will give us a chance for 5% loyalists, or much more importantly, that we can get a gentry assembly resign. Also, we will incidentally get 5 legitimacy, which is not going to be too important right now, but when we switch up the government, it probably is going to be important. And so we'll say goodbye to this guy and say hello to our protection. And we got a little bit more of a chance thing right here. Now, first of all, before we're making any sort of these Diplo agreements, we did want to let this tick down below 25, our infamy to tick down, and also our Prussian relations to tick up to amicable, so get to plus 50. But now we're ready to have a nice die roll for our chance of getting them to accept our treaty. We could say we have a 61% chance, and what this is going to do is going to give us trade privileges. Now, I'm not overwhelmingly familiar with the exact effects of trade privileges in terms of how good they feel and this type of thing, but what they are going to do is going to give us more trade advantage based on the volume of trade we are doing between these markets. But we also want something else from them. We want no tariffs on wood if we can get it, and also no tariffs on hardwood if we can get it. And so let's put these in and see exactly how they feel about this. They really hate the idea of this. They really hate the idea of no new tariffs. All right, so we won't go for that. We'll instead go for a little bit of trade privileges. Normal trade agreements are no longer a thing, but we do have this trade privilege, and we will see just how handsome we are. That's dedicated police. Bueller? Prussia? Notice us, please. Alright. We failed one die roll, but truly, this dedicated police, this is going to be the true test of just how handsome we are. Surely we are handsome enough to win these type of odds. Alright, well, we get a treaty with Austria, so I guess we just low-rolled the one with Prussia, and we didn't get it, but we now are going to have that treaty with Austria. So why don't we take a close look at just how bad we need tools they are in the queue, but let's take a look at what our trade centers are doing, and how exactly things have changed. So before we had negative trade advantage, by moving around our interests, we have gotten a little bit better trade advantage, and what this does is this means we get to sell at a higher price. And so we are going to be, look at the figure at the right, we are exporting at this 24 figure, and import, or at the local price it's at 18, so the trade centers are making this 6.8 marginal difference between the two. We do lack an interest though here in what appears to be down here. That's crazy that we're exporting to Dynam. So we could shuffle around an interest. In fact, we have one. So we'll put an interest down in Indochina to try and make that a little bit better so that we can get just a slightly better price. Now, I do think that this trade agreement is supposed to help us out as well. To get us to have a little bit more trade advantage that we have secured for ourselves with Austria. I almost said Russia. We are Russia. Alright, so it's no longer like the case that we just want to run a bunch of our free trade routes. We get 5 free levels if we're adjacent, and you want to trade all the things. Right now, currently, tea is being traded, and we're not choosing to do the trade route because we don't choose to do the trade route anymore. And let's say we don't want tea to be traded because we kind of don't. We kind of just want more wood to be exported, and we also don't really want our grain to be exported. We don't really want to use this. We don't want to be using our resources as far as exports go on either of these. So let's just say hypothetically, this is our export tariff. We're going to increase our export tariff on tea. And then we're also going to increase our export tariff on grain by a whole lot. That way, our grain will not get exported. Now, in theory, maybe we could try and push corn laws by putting a subvention on this, really expensive. But I think Russia has far too much grain for that to be a thing. And so we're just going to unpause and just see what happens. The grain trade route goes away. The one on a tea remains. And we cannot change it. We're locked in for a little while. Did it maybe go down a little? I think it was 0.6 in revenue before. I think it's running the same amount, so not enough to really undo it. In particular, these are based on base prices, both the tariffs and the subventions, and so they will make a bigger difference when the prices collapse versus the price is expensive, and tea has an expensive price, whereas the grain had a cheap price, and so when the price is really low, it's going to have a bigger effect, and so it's not surprising that the grain just fell off immediately, and the tea is, well, remaining in more or less. So we just finished up lathes here. We had prepped 10k worth of research on Atmo Engine, so we will get that next week. And we are also, which is going to be incredible, we'll swap up those PMs in a second, and we also just finished passing of legal guardianship. And the important point here is now the Gentry Assembly just incredibly happy with us. They love everything we're about. They love what we've just done. And so now we're going to betray them a little. We're going to betray them a little by slotting them in. We say, yikes, we're not even legitimate here. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower taxes in order to put us into a more acceptable bracket. And then we are going to try and pass homesteading, and we are going to have a decent chance of it. Or actually, we could go for tenant farmers. Tenant farmers may be a little bit easier. So we are going to go for tenant farmers, and the important reason here is, even though the landowners do oppose tenant farmers, they are not contributing to the stall chance like the Orthodox Church is, and the reason for this is that they are still happy with us despite this, although this is going to decay out, and eventually they will start giving us some stall chance. Also important to note is that we are floating authority. We are floating nearly max, 99% here, which is going to give us some minus enactment time, which will help to counteract the fact that we are running a bit of an unacceptable government with plus 50% enactment time. So we will be a little bit slow on this one. Hopefully we can squeeze it through because we have to get off serfdom if we want to get off of traditionalism here. Alright, so we currently have a trade advantage of 10% on wood. This is largely because we are a big producer of wood within our own market area. And so this is going to be good for us because we get to buy at a higher price, the export price being 24 in this instance. You can see it off the tooltip off to the right. Now, there has been something that has been not very good since 1.7, or sorry, since 1.8. It was good in 1.7, and that is external trade. External trade was really good because the influential trade center, which incidentally might be really good now. I don't really know, because it's hard to rate how good influence is because how many agreements you're going to have. It's difficult to tell this type of thing. But I do see that we can get more trade advantage and trade capacity from external trade 1. This fits in alignment with our goals of trying to dominate the global kind of production of wood, and so we are going to put this in. And then we are going to take a look-see at how this has affected our trade advantage back down in, not in that spot, but rather in the trade center here. And so we are at 10%. If we unpause and we let this tick, what's going to happen here? Well, we get more trade capacity, so immediately some trade routes happen in. I don't think this was the grain, did it rear its ugly head and come back? I think it might have, but I think what we can do here is we can actually, let's do this with the tobacco, the tariff for import, because we are currently importing it, we're going to kick this down because we want the route to primarily move wood if possible, but we did see it move from 10% to 11%, so the advantage is kicking in a little bit, and we do have, if you see here, 25% from 2 sources, one from mercantilism and one from external trade here. So we're going from 125% to 150% in terms of our modifiers, so an increase from 10% to 11% with paradox math included does make a bit of sense. So in terms of where we are at, we are still getting roughly a quarter of our own buy orders from trade, but in terms of worldwide production, we've gone from maybe 25% to around 30-35%, somewhere in that range in terms of moving up around 1K, while everyone else has remained relatively stagnant, so we are capturing a larger market share here. We are also swapping up to iron frame buildings, and I think that we're not doing them all at once. We have the ammo engine, we're starting to get things pushed a little bit. You want to kind of do it piecemeal, but I think to that end, we don't really mind if iron gets imported, and so what we're going to do is we are going to change this over where we are not going to be charging a tariff on the way in or out on iron, and so if the iron price spikes because we turn stuff on or up, we will start importing more iron, and very importantly, we can import more iron than we would otherwise be able to, kind of in previous versions. There's also something that we've been wanting to show off, but we've been struggle busing a little bit, and that is qualifications and pushing economies of scale. We can't hire up here, and this is a bit of an issue because there's not enough qualifications. It's going to say these pops are not a fan of moving on over from one thing to another, can't find additional employees, and if we take a look at the population, there's plenty of peasants here, and a big kind of sink on that is homesteading, so we're hoping that this tenant farmers will pass here. Unfortunately, we're not handsome enough. We just spiked this event. We're going to take the enactment chance, or as much enactment chance as we can, and this is perhaps something that, as someone who's relatively backward as Russia, you have to do, because instead of building in a bunch of different places, which is kind of how we've been doing things before, it's more important that you build in one place and you build really tall. Oh, We accidentally clicked the wrong thing. I thought we were doing that all this time. But we are going to do promote social mobility here. And this is going to allow us to get more qualifications so that we can try and push the economies of scale in particular. So you can see here education access, which incidentally will give qualifications and qualifications as well. But the big one for us is also going to be getting through and passing this on to tenant farmers, getting off of serfdom in terms of getting this. And what we will get in exchange for this is we will be able to employ up, so we will get more throughput, but also we will be able to push up to 60% throughput once we get the additional 17 economies of scale. Our company is doing a really poor job at acquiring additional levels, and my understanding is if we have a level 10 in the location where it's founded, which is in the capital, it will be a little bit better at doing this, and so we're going to put in 10 logging camps in the capital here so that we can try and get this to get going, because they are not buying logging camps. But in addition to that 60% throughput, we are hoping to, with our company bonus, get an additional 68% throughput, so we will be getting 130% throughput on our wood. And this is going to allow us to really collapse the price and really try and take over the global market. We also noticed a new little bonus here. The Kotlan Island in Ingria is actually going to make this state way better than it has been previously. It's going to get 5% MAPI. I wonder if the British Isles bonuses are also giving 5% MAPI now. They are giving 5% MAPI. That's fantastic. These always should have given MAPI. Exciting to see them giving MAPI now. But very importantly, here we are going to have port building throughput as well. And so in theory, this is going to be the best place for us to honk outside. It's also going to be at least a decent place for us to push port levels, and ports are an input for trade. So in theory, this is one of the better places for us to build a trade sector, and this might make more sense as our industrial base than what we've started here with Kharkov, where we are getting, this 5% MAPI, which is going to be decent. We are going to also have much more arable land, so it could support a larger population, and we need it for our company anyways, and so this is why we're pushing it here. But the presence of these better shipping here might just overcome that, and this might just be a better spot. This is something to consider. Very cool to be seeing that these have gotten a little bit of love. These always should have given a really good bonus. Given that rivers are giving 5% MAPI, ports should probably give the same thing, so exciting to be seeing this here. Alright, the moment of truth here. For getting this tenant farmers through, we're obviously above 50% chance, so because we're a gamer, anytime something's above 50%, we feel entitled to it, and anything other than a 100% result of above 50%, we will be outraged and livid and throw a tantrum as a gamer. So now that this is passed, I think what we're going to want to do is we're going to maybe want to spend some of our authority investing in bolstering this liberal movement here. In particular, we are hoping for them to start influencing these guys, and putting in a chance that we roll a market liberal, which I do believe can happen. We do see the possible character ideologies, though, only on Democrat and Republican, so maybe they have changed that since things have gone through, but we are maybe past the point where we need to, or kind of are trying to pass laws super fast. Let's get into armed forces. I do believe that they can get us in some useful laws. We can go for religious schools. This would help with the qualifications. Religious schools aren't going to be as good, but it's not going to be the biggest deal in the world. We could also just go for colonization. I think I kind of like going for colonization. This seems like kind of a little bit of a layup to let people settle down a little bit from passing something that they don't like in this tenant farmers, because both our landowners and our devout do not like that. So let's go for some colonial exploitation here. We have a pretty high population that's incorporated, so that's going to help. Incidentally, we're also trying to push up the incorporation. This is just kind of a classic Russia thing. You start off with a lot of stuff not incorporated, and so we are also in the background starting to push up this type of we're starting to push up bureaucracy, and then also starting to push up incorporating these. Incidentally, in terms of the overall chain of goods that are going into the support for increasing this, a lot of this input is wood, right? In terms of creating the paper that then is run in the administrations, the government administrations, and so because of that, us collapsing the paper price in some sort of sense is going to make stuff like the universities and this a little bit cheaper. If we take a look, most of our price here is in paper. paper. So I think we're also going to maybe try and take a look at where we can specifically expand paper, put it on auto expand, this type of thing. Kharkiv is going to be a kind of #1 candidate because we have encouraged manufacturing here. So we'll put in a nice auto expand. This is kind of just a nice quality of life thing in order to make sure that we keep the construction queue going and we don't really idle it. We put down a bunch of fishing wharves. I suppose we don't want the ones in other countries, actually. And so this is 200 construction. It de-peasants pretty well. But I think we should be in better shape now that we've gotten to the point where we are... Yeah, we don't have that yet. Now that we've gotten to the point where we're on tenant farmers, I think that the qualifications are going to be much, much better, and that in a place like Yaroslavl, even though we have the POPs and not being able to employ, I think that this is going to get fixed a little bit, and we will be able to push up to our economies of scale like we wanted to and kind of demonstrate things. Incidentally, this place already fully employed. We're just waiting on the company to start purchasing levels there. They are kind of doing okay in prosperity, but not really doing so great at acquiring levels. We could give them trade rights and then they will acquire a ton of levels, but I want them to be more focused on the wood than on trade centers. But maybe, I'm not sure, it could just be the case that you want them all to have trade centers just because trade centers are OP, and maybe we will look to spam some trade centers ourselves to try and increase the volume of trade, which will make our wood a little bit more beneficial. We're having qualification problems there, so let's not push it too much, and let's push a little bit in perm. This is kind of the few places we're trying to push, but let's also go for some spots where we know we have a lot of iron, and that these might be a little bit better overall, or places that we are going to be building. Tula has an enormous amount of wood, and so that's probably going to be good. I think Smolensk or Tver also has above a 10 stack on the wood, so really kind of able to push the throughput on this for economies of scale, and this maybe should have been what we got for. Financial districts have bought up some of these levels, but we have a monopoly given out to these guys, so they should be getting more of the levels, and or they can buy from other private industries. Not be constructed by private actors other than the company. Any naturally owned buildings will automatically be available for the company to be privatized. And so yeah, I think that they can... Or have they not implemented that? Existing private company building levels are not affected. Okay, well, any future ones have to be going to this company here. So a little bit slow start for the Russian America company. So we are going to expand, looking to transfer Korea, which is on theme, as well as give ourselves a land border into them. But we also have this massive new menu that we can do in terms of enforcing treaty articles. Now, we've already put some stuff in, and unfortunately, it appears that treaty ports aren't exactly working the way we think they are. I think that we're just going to put it in, but I'm not sure if this is going to end up applying or what have you. We're going to put in on a treaty port, and then we are also going to put in on another article. I think that we are going to say, hey, you can't tariff softwood as we try and export it to you, but they're a big producer of it anyways, so it's not going to be that big a deal, but it doesn't take any infamy in order to put this in. They're relatively worried. If they back down and we get all the things we want, that's kind of okay with us. We will incur a little bit of extra infamy going for these kind of two states here, but they're not very expensive infamy states, and they're still suffering a little bit from the opium wars, but not too much. This is kind of the last window I think we have where we will have a really easy war against them. Also, incidentally, it's worth noting we are on kind of an early version of the build, so it is a little bit spicy, which is why we have multiple treaties of the Holy Alliance. But really, is this not just on theme rather than being, you know, a bug? I think this is a feature because we, of course, have the Trinity as it is holy. The Trinity of three Holy Alliances. This one's the Father, this one's the Son, this one's the Holy Ghost. And so that's going to be working for us as well. But this war should be relatively straightforward. They're very weak. They don't have good PMs. We should be able to push in, and there's a decent chance that they back down anyways. But you can also put in how much money you want to transfer. So this is the replacement on war reps. We're going to be trying to transfer 26k. We are just hitting the point where we're starting to lose some money. So this would be a nice little boon in our pocket. we see a new little ideology here in the sovereignist. We haven't seen this, nor have we seen it in a dev diary that I can recall, but these guys are going to endorse multiculturalism. In fact, they have a stance on citizenship that is multicultural, and so this is going to be kind of a big one, or kind of a big deal, depending on how easily you can get these guys. We're going to welcome him, just like the road is welcoming that loud car outside, although I'm assuming he will probably kick the bucket. He's only 38. Maybe he survives. He's also cautious. Ooh, what a boyo. I wonder if this guy's historic. I don't think he is, but this is going to be quite nice. He also supports the liberal movement, which incidentally we are bolstering, so this is going to be nice for us in the long run. In terms of what they support, they're going to support us getting onto some type of voting system, better bureaucracy, and so we're going to be a big fan of that, and we're looking in good shape. We're also looking in good shape on this war. You can see that these battles now have progress bars, which is really great, and also this front is not going to spaghetti, at least from our kind of experience. That we've noticed. Prussian society, we're on board with that, because they rhyme. But as far as we can tell, the improvement, the spaghettiness has been improved by virtue of fronts effectively being regional now. Of course, exploitation is morally correct, but we will be kind of swooping in here and then nabbing Korea, and then we will have a pretty long infamy decay. Once we hit 25, we'll try and get some more diplomatic agreements, and by then, we should be on external trade too, which is going to be something we're very excited for, because this hasn't been good for a while, but influential trade center. That's going to give us a bunch of extra influence. Or did they nerf it? Is this a paradox math number? This must be a fraction represented in paradox math. But it's also going to give extra trade capacity. Wait, chicka, what? This is news. This actually might be insanely good. So this is incredibly exciting, but it's on theme with what we're trying to do, which is to try and force everyone else out of the wood department and say, nah, dog, we do that. To some extent, we should have... I guess we didn't need to help. I was going to say we should have helped the Confederacy to hurt the USA's ability to produce wood, or at least be a market leader in this type of sense, and so make us look better. But it looks like they had a really early one of these and some problems. Also, shout out to Texas, I suppose. I spoke too soon. We got some ravioli. To be fair, though, this is the most problematic front. Is going to be these northern Russia and northern Canada kind of locations tend to create the most problems. But we do get a little bit of a split here as this moves on forward. Did he instantly teleport and get there? Maybe there wasn't a problem. Wait. Hold up. Let's reassign to this front. No? He's already on that front. Let's try and move him to an HQ. Okay, so does he instantly get to activate at that front, but we have to move him manually? Or he instantly arrives? I'm not sure exactly what's giving us the advantage here, such that we could do this, and the fact that... and that we're able to get battles done, or are we just losing battles automatically? Well, now it's reunified, so, I was excited. Now we have pasta. Alright, let's see exactly what we get from external trade, too, in terms of these influential trade centers. So let's first just take a look at a trade center we have. I know that we have some in Moscow, or actually, let's take a look at the ones in here. We know that we have some in here, and this is our wood kind of place. We can see that, man, they have a lot of wood that they are exporting, 720, and also employment's a little bit better after we've passed, kind of getting off of serfdom. Also, employment's fine up here, too, so that really is kind of a huge driver for us. But we have 6 levels in here, and we are producing 60 trade capacity. So as this upgrades to an influential trade center, just how much trade capacity is this going to go up to? So let's take a look at the power block. We're going to go and unlock this influential trade center. Is it just actually plus 10 per level? That's insane. That's just doubling it. So let's put this in here and see what this is all about. That's an insane number if that goes live. Trade capacity is at 60. Now it's using 75 of 75. Is this an influential trade center, though? No, it's just a trade center. It's not been upgraded to an influential one yet? Or what is required here? Are they even... Okay, well... Okay, well, we see this in here where it is going to be giving us 24 influence, so a very small amount of influence. I think that might have been nerfed. We're running 49 trades, and this gives us 490 trade capacity in total. But how much are we getting specifically in this location? We were at 60 trade capacity. Is it just represented in an opaque way where it's going to be generating? Is that this extra 15 here? Is that where that's coming from? If we take a look here, we have plus 25%. Is that from... No, that's just from external trade too. So where are we getting this extra additional trade capacity in theory? Or I guess it's right here. Weekly trades. Plus 6. An increase to the number of adjustments to trade that a state can make each week. Oh, does that just mean we can make more different trade routes rather than being able to make... I don't even know exactly what weekly trades refers to, so I guess that's something we have to investigate. So we are really starting to turn a corner here with the trade centers and the wood combined. We have been pushing up trade centers. We were exporting like 600 or 700 wood, and now we're up to 1,700. You can see if we take a look at the price of wood, that's what this spike is about, the increase in the trade centers. But at the same time, we don't have an interest in that. At the same time, we are decreasing the price by spamming more wood. And so generally speaking, wood is insanely efficient. So if it's at base price, you make a ton of money. As the price decreases, you make less money. So we are building more wood, gaining profit, but decreasing price to make it that we make less money. The trade center is making it so that the profits don't go back, profits don't go down. And you can see it hitches up even again as we finish a bunch of trade centers. And then as we finish all these logging camps, it'll come back down. But what this is doing to everyone else's economy, because we keep exporting this, is the global price of wood is starting to come down lower and lower for everyone else, and this is making it harder and harder for them to try and export. In terms of the advantage, is this compared to us? I don't see us on here. Oh, we have a relative advantage of only 18% for exports. Rough. That's not ideal. Oh, we have poor market access because we're overbuilt. Yeah. We need railroads, so that perhaps makes some sense. Belgium is doing spectacularly overall because it has really good in a couple locations, so they are getting better prices. They do have trade privileges, giving them a ton. They must have trade privileges with the UK. They're trading with them. Okay, that probably that makes a lot of sense. If they have trade privileges with the UK market is huge, and so that is, we're outperforming Sweden, but we have to compete with Belgium, who's the only other kind of big exporter. And in terms of the importers, we can see Great Britain, but the world market price is going to, just generally speaking, I wish we could hover this and see the trajectory. Generally speaking, as we push more and more wood, this is going to cause the price of this to fall. Of course, we did see it hitch up just a bit there, but the overall trajectory should be falling as we dump more wood into the market. Colonial exploitation is going to be nice. Everyone loves that, except, you know... Oh my sweet Jesus, this is such a good change. Gold Rush, you can now just say always spread the word and it will always spread the word. Or it's always mine and it will always be yours. We're going to do always spread the word and we're going to never have to click on that ever again. Alright, so I think monopolies for charter companies might just be broken. Because we have seen them acquire a couple of levels of ports, but we have seen them acquire 0 wood, 0 loud cars, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take off this monopoly off of them, because I think that this is preventing them from buying logging camps. And we definitely want these to be purchased, and so then we're going to come in, but we want them to be purchased specifically by them. Man, we really want them to be monopolized, so we can put in the, gives Russia unique ones, but we're going to put these on privatize, allow them to be purchased up, and just hope that the company snags a bunch of them, but we are hoping to give them a monopoly, but they're not purchasing any. The Moscow one is the only one inside of our nation that has been created. The other one that's been created is like the one in Persia here, and so we hope that the company picks up most of the logging camps. We hope that they pick them up in Ingria, and maybe this is why we haven't been able to get anything rolling in that regard. All right, so the company does pick up a couple of levels in Yaroslavel. Sorry, I'm almost certainly butchering that pronunciation. And now we are up to 65% throughput. We are getting a little bit from economies of scale. Part of it is hurt because the buildings are mostly government-owned, but we are also getting a little bit of a bonus from the company at this point. So we're over 65%, and as more of these get purchased, this is going to help out more. We can get over 100%, but our exports of wood are going to drop quite a bit because we have a lot of tooling workshops, we don't have a lot of cars outside, but we have even less steel, and we have just turned on steel tools, and so what's going to end up happening is that the price of steel is going to get very, very high in our market. And so if we look at our market and we look what's going on in terms of our prices, or in terms of our plus minus, we can see that this, well, first of all, let's not tariff any imports, and so they can come in just fine. But also, if we look at the world market and see who's importing steel, that's us, right there. We are getting a better price as the only importer of steel, which doesn't make sense relative to the... If we are getting a better price than the world market price, then doesn't that mean this is a free money modifier? If that's going to be the way that that operates, that's an interesting thing. If you can completely occupy the import, and I suppose by implication export as well, does that make it so that you get a better than you get a free money modifier? That's so very fascinating. But the idea is we have a bunch of trade routes now as a result of needing the steel from switching on the PMs. So we're about ready, or we're getting very close to the point where we're ready to swap up onto the wood. Now, we have a normal looking economy in terms of size, and we're about to put on the subventions, but I just want to point something out. We have 39 iron, 9 coal. It's like, oh, this is kind of, well, it's small for Russia. And then we have 220 wood farms. And so this is going to be quite interesting when we turn this on eventually. But we should see, interestingly, as our capacity for trade has been kind of swooped up from... Actually, we don't see an increase in price here. That's interesting. I was expecting to see a big fat increase in price as some of our trade volume has moved on over to steel, I assume. But I guess we're going to be... Or yeah, there we go. So we start getting the downtick because we don't have as much trade to buoy up the price anymore. We also, of course, are getting more benefits from the specialty trade centers from our... what have you, the power block thing that we are utilizing. And so let's just take a look. We have 70 trade centers in total. This is going to be giving us 70, I think it's giving us 70 trade capacity, and one of these is redundant, and it was 700, it was 10 trade capacity per level before, and that's insane, and 70 is much more reasonable, which represents like a 10% increase over what we have right now, and a little bit of influence, and so this is going to be fairly nice. It's going to be nicer as we get more and more of these trade centers. So we'll look to push those up, and then take things and check things out with the subvention. Alright, as a bunch of these woods are finishing, we're seeing, without even needing the subventions, people are getting forced out of the exporting market. Belgium's forced out, and more people are getting forced into trading because the price differential is overcoming their own base prices. But we see now we have a positive relative advantage, and what this is doing is this is absolutely brutalizing the price for Sweden. The export price, minus 13%. That is super brutal for them because they are trying to export, and as they export, they need the difference between the price that they currently have and the market price. The market price is effectively cut down by 13%, right? And so they have less of a differential here, and so we are effectively cannibalizing Sweden and Belgium's previous ability to export, and we are also, of course, adding more and more to the list here. Interestingly, the British aren't consuming an absolutely enormous amount anymore, and it is instead just widely distributed. I'm not sure what change might have happened in the British market to cause that, but it's going to be very curious to see if we use subventions and we push out Sweden, and we still get a wood advantage. Maybe this is actually just like free value for us. I'm not entirely sure, but that's intriguing. There's a lot of math that needs to get done on whether or not this is good or just kind of a meme or what have you in this type of thing. So we have gone out of our way to get trade privileges from France, and also we had them already from Austria, and so that in theory is going to drive up our trade advantage even more. If we take a look at one of these tooltips here, we will be seeing that we are getting 47 from trade privileges, the same amount that we are getting for wood production in our own area, and we can see that it is from getting them or getting trade privileges from people that are covering a large amount of the exports in terms of what they are importing into their market. And so this has kicked this number up basically just in a week from 5%. Well, I was going to say from 5% to 7%, but it's back down to 5. I think in theory this pushes this up a little higher, except now it's starting to push down. What's going on? Are people importing less? There's a lot of things to track that are going on right now. Oh, what's going on is Sweden's getting pushed out. They were in like the 50s before, the mid 50s, and now they're at minus 60. This price is getting pushed down too much for them to actually be able to support any exports. And also we are adding more wood. And so as we add more wood, we are slowly pushing them out. They were up at like 300 in terms of nominal amount, and the amount that we are exporting is increasing. And so maybe we shove them out pretty soon here. We get a little Kazakh revolt action, which of course will allow us to annex these gentlemen. Alright, in terms of how we've been executing this come up of wood production, we have been building a bunch of these to level 20 in terms of the practice, and the reason why we are doing this, although we're not going to put Moscow to 20 because it doesn't have the infrastructure, the reason why we're doing this is because in terms of the math, if you have anything above level 0, you get more effectively by building something that is already constructed up to the throughput cap than you do from building something that already has a throughput cap in terms of how the math works. But with that said, we have wood here at a minus 49%, and we're not going to get into some great depth about price equilibriums, but not all prices should be equal in an economy in terms of you building the absolute most profitable building. If the PM is more efficient, you can tolerate a lower price, and you can reach what's called an indifference threshold, where you don't care what you build because everything will be equally profitable per construction or per pop, whichever you care about. And wood is generally so efficient on a per construction basis, because it's only 200 construction to build wood, that you generally tolerate a lower price for wood. Maybe it's minus 25% given the current PMs that we have in our current situation would kind of be a normal situation, but we have a wood company, so this pushes it down lower because our wood isn't just on average 130% of a building. It might be 150% of a building or 190% of a building or something like this, and it changes the math, 190% being 90% throughput on top of this. And so we also have at least some of our wood, although not most of it, under a decree. Incidentally, that is also a reason why just expanding here is also going to be solid enough, because these are going to be worth more because we have a decree down at this place. But coming back to the wood price here, 49% minus 49%. This is probably a bridge too far. It's probably the case that building to this is incorrect, but I don't think it's super incorrect, and it's possible that it's fine. But it is very interesting to see what that does in terms of the world market, because that strangles out Sweden here. Sweden is down to 150 sell orders, and pretty soon we're going to finish strangling them out, which incidentally makes it really, really valuable, the people who have trade agreements with us, in terms of their ability to get an advantage, to get a better price on the wood. If they have good relations with us, they get an advantage here. And this creates some interesting situations in regards to multiplayer that I think are interesting. Like, for example, if you're playing Russia, you can kind of force people out of the market. They're probably going to tariff the wood, and that tariffing is probably a strong response to this type of behavior. But you can effectively dominate the market of in terms of the AI who is willing to buy wood and completely own it relative to other people, because it costs you less, because you have advantages like the wood forest bonus, which the USA does too. Maybe USA is actually better than Russia at this. Another thing I wanted to point out is the world market price is now at minus 11%. So this is the base world market price, is then manipulated depending on your advantage level into something a little bit different in terms of what differential you're going to get in your trade centers. But this has been pulled down like something like 20% by our efforts here. But the thing we wanted to kind of bring up is this is kind of borderline, and it maybe makes sense and it maybe doesn't. And I think this is actually the same case with subventions, because when we are going to pay a bunch of money, it's not going to be the case that this money just gets flushed down the toilet. What is going to happen is this 12%, 12.5% is going to be applied to base price by my understanding here, and what it will happen is this 2.5 gold will be applied to the price of our wood in terms of determining whether or not this is something that gets traded. So our wood, we will pay the subvention price, and then our wood will be treated as if it were 9.5 on average in terms of price for determining how much of it we export. So we in turn get to export more of it, and much like the price equilibrium type of consideration, it might be worth paying a subvention even though you're going to net lose money. You are going to get a little bit of the money back in terms of juicing up your economy, as well as through the trade center itself, right? You're going to juice up your economy because you're going to increase the price of wood, which is going to make all your wood places more profitable, and the trade centers are going to make a little bit more, but they're not going to make the amount equals to the subvention, even though they're increasing the differential by this, because they're going to be giving up other profitable routes that they could have run anyways. And so it's going to be the marginal difference between that previous route that is getting overridden by the route as a result of the subvention. This is like all a little bit complicated, and I hope I'm not getting too in the weeds here for starting steps of type video, but there's a lot of things that are going on in terms of thinking through how good the subvention is, and I'm really not sure how good it is. But when we do this, we are expecting Sweden to just get absolutely kicked out, and we are going to take a look at the current export levels in the world market. We are providing into the world market 2.8k, Sweden is providing 150, and we are expecting this to absolutely just blast up into outer space, and we're expecting this to come down. And if we subvention hard enough on something that has a low enough price, you can actually get it to be the case that your market is going to be more expensive than other people's markets while you're exporting, which is a wild thing, and it'll be the subvention that subsidizes that type of situation. And as we collapse the price of wood in other people's markets, it might make sense for us to build the wood, right? Because we have these places that have, this 67% throughput, and we were saying it's borderline good for us. If we collapse their prices down to minus 50, it's not going to make sense for them to build wood anymore. So we're going to take it on pause and see just exactly what happens here. Some technical difficulties there on that unpause, but as the weeks pass, immediately up at 2.7k as an immediate adjustment is made. Incidentally, as we push the price down, we should see more imports as well. 2.3k, 3.27k, now it's up to 3.5 and 2.45k. And what's going to happen is our price was minus 49%. Our price is brought up. So every single one of our logging camps is made more profitable here, but the world market price is getting brought down. It's down 8%. And so it's harder and harder for other people to be profitable. Shocked to see Sweden still in the mix here. I'm expecting that as our proportion rises, Sweden's penalty here is going to get bigger and bigger, up to 3.75k. That's going to be great for us. We'll have better access to the world market with railroads, because we have some places that are over right now, but right now we want to watch this up to 2.75k. The 3.75k holding on steady, but they are increasing imports because the price is so low that the price is lower now, and the difference between their higher price of wood and the lower world market price of good, as that stretches and gets bigger and becomes the biggest available route for their trade centers to take, their trade centers take the route. It's all automated. They don't get to pick. They only get to pick through their tariffs and subventions, strategic level ideas, these types of things. And so it is being forced upon them to consume our wood. Our hardwood too. We have been the only exporter of hardwood for some time now. We just haven't taken a look at it, and we can see our price is increasing in our own market. Remember, it was minus 49% before, so all of our wood is wildly more profitable. And if we take a look at subventions, we're only paying 9k. And so the thing is we're paying 9k. And so this is just like a strict loss. Or it's not a strict loss, but it's a loss on paper, and then we are recouping it in the trade centers, and we're recouping it on the logging. And the question is whether or not this is worth it. I don't know the answer. I think it probably... Ooh, what's this? Why is it to -7? I guess it's up to -7 because they massively increased the amount of buy orders. They're up to 3k now, and we are not continuing with the same proportionate trajectory, up to -5, and that's actually just really, really good for us. If the world market is coming up in price like this, in response to this, because this just means that they are consuming way, way, way more wood, and as we take a look here, we are up to -30%, so that's going to be really, really nice for us. Everything's a lot more profitable. In terms of, we are just absolutely completely dominating the world market. I am shocked to see Sweden still in here, though. I don't understand how they haven't gotten pushed out. I guess, yeah, I mean, they're just still in here. But in terms of the worldwide production, we started with like -7k. East India Company is up maybe like 1.5k. France is up a little bit. USA is down because the Confederacy left. Qing is up like a couple hundred, but we have more than doubled in our proportion. So we are dominating overall in terms of our proportionate ownership of the economy that is wood. Now, part of this is also just collapsing the wood price relative to what it was at the start. But taking a look within our own market and looking at our buy and sell orders, we're going to be able to see that we have roughly a third of our sell orders are going to be in trade. Remember, we started with a quarter in here, and we're up to a third despite doubling our production of wood. And so what this subvention is going to allow us to do is to build more wood for longer, which is going to be something that is maybe worth the trade-off of losing this money, and it's not going to be all this money because it's going to stimulate the economy in various other kind of ways that are subtle. So, as we've kind of mentioned before, the version we have received is a little bit spicy. For example, our war goal over here didn't fully enforce, and something that is a little spicy is that we can draft a treaty with Turkmenia. Apparently, we haven't checked out to see how this goes, so this will just be our reaction to like how this works. But we're curious if we could do this and transfer them a location, or a state rather. So this is this state right here, and we haven't tried clicking this button yet. So let's see what happens if we try and send the proposal. I guess we'll put a year on this, and they won't be willing to accept it. Oh, will they just always refuse everything? What if we give you a money transfer for some time? Will that make you happier? What if it's a bigger money transfer? Will you like that then? You will like that. If we transfer these gentlemen 1,000 a week, they will take this province off of our hands, this little state here. So let's see how they feel and how they say about this. Bueller? Is it behind door number 1? We did pacify the steps, and we sent them some ducats, some buckets of ducats. It looks like, yeah, it looks like they can't accept the agreement, which of course makes sense. It's funny you can send it though, unless, are we sending money? It doesn't look like it. So I guess that's the end of that. A curious little interaction with the UI though that is kind of cute here. Alright, so for the most part, prices have been holding steady as we have massively expanded wood. We're up to 5k in terms of our export. We've seen Belgium kind of popping their head in a little bit here and there, but what we're doing now is we're just going to add a bunch of trade centers and see how that kind of interacts with the whole thing. We have a bunch in production. We're going to add a bunch more in various places. Just kind of look to spread them out a little bit, because I think that the first trade center is actually probably worth a lot more than marginal trade centers, and then trade centers where you, of course, are running this massive surplus like we are here in Yaroslavel are of course going to also be very valuable. But if you have any kind of surplus or need in particular and it's really, really unsatisfied, the first trade center should, I think in theory, be really, really valuable. I haven't like done any sort of math on this type of thing, but just watching the effect of what happens when we add the trade centers back in, we've seen the price stall out, and then the price hitches up as we add some of these trade centers back in, and we break into below minus 35%, the good old copper coins prices prices. As prices get pulled down a little bit, they're coming back up. In terms of the overall global market price, though, this is coming down, and our exports are, of course, up to 5,700. So we stalled out in terms of prices because we stopped increasing trade, even though we continued to increase logging. And so this is going to be a big one. Also, we are starting to push economies of scale on the tooling workshops. Again, trying to hit that 20. This is a classic 1.4 metagame kind of in action, where you just push economies of scale and you use the ability to export stuff to facilitate that. So to that end, we're going to go to running 0 tariffs on this. Now, we might import some of these over the short term, but the idea of going for 0 tariffs is so that we can export these a little bit better. And if we take a look in the world market, yeah, we're currently a net importer, and we're kind of a big net importer. So as our, it's a good opportunity likely to be really profitable here once we kind of start to finish these up, and we'll look to add them in other places. Joint stock companies also unlocked. So let's take a quick look at the wood first here, though. In terms of where things are going, our prices have actually come up quite a bit. And so this is because we are running more trade. The trade is increasing the price here. Because we are getting more buy orders, and in turn, the market price has also come down, which is going to be something that benefits us. Sweden is just being really sticky and is just not giving up the trade. Of course, they have no agency in the matter. It's entirely automated, but this is kind of the way the cookie is crumbling right now. But speaking of crumbling, this has nothing to do with crumbling, actually. We're going to add in New Russia Limited, and we are hoping, really hoping that this is going to have a tooling workshop potential in here in terms of something else we can add to the New Russia Limited company. So if we look at industry rights, they have an industry rights on a railway, which is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not a tooling workshop, but if we could choose something, that would be a pretty good one, and we will be able to put in iron mine, these types of things. And so let's take a look at what we are doing exactly with our things. We're bolstering the liberal movement. We don't need to do that with those liberals here. And so we are going to come in here, we're going to get rid of this, stop bolstering, and then we're going to come in here and do the little thing where we raise wages on a temporary basis. Let's also get rid of one of these, and so we will be able to put in more things for our companies, because these take authority now, which is a very significant buff to authority. So we could give monopoly rights to these things, and I assume the domestic monopoly rights will be functioning a little bit better. So we're going to try giving domestic monopoly rights to iron, and then we are also going to give industry rights to the railway, because that is a pretty exciting thing. So now we have a railway company. Man, this is insane. What an insano company. And it's going to be giving us not just the 10% railway throughput, but on top of this, the the extra 39%, so 49% railway throughput, and this is starting to get prosperous. It had not been really that prosperous because the price of wood had really been collapsed, but adding in all those trade centers has really kind of brought things up. We are actually starting to get a decent amount of these purchased and start into private hands. It's a shame that running a monopoly was kind of like bugged out, because we probably would have gotten to showcase a much more dramatic drop in price in wood and kind of ship out enormous volume had we been getting like 40% throughput on average, something like this. But seeing things, we're now up to 6,600. So just in like the couple minutes that we've had where we finished these trade centers, right, we've gone, I think, from like 4,900 to 6,600. So let's take a look at kind of like the overalls, what's going on with the wood. Of course, overalls, a shout out to Djenne, but we are going to see that if we hover worldwide, we see coming up a little bit is Qing as well as the Raj, France a little bit too, so maybe 2k total from the global thing, but now we are getting close to be running half of the trade routes out of all the people in the top list. Or not trade routes, the production of wood. So we've gone from roughly a quarter to maybe this is around 40-45%. Didn't really do the quick maths on it, but we are increasing our overall market share of wood, and the subvention is going to help us out over the long term. It's not going to kill everyone's wood production immediately, but it's going to make it so that their auto queue, it doesn't want to build a lot of wood. Now, we also... We also were in particular watching the volume of sell orders that we had from trade. And I do think we're going to have a lot not from trade still, but buy and sell orders. But our current buy orders, we currently have sell orders of 2K, but our current buy orders, how much are these from trade? A very solid amount from trade. What is this, like 40% or something like this? This is or over 40%. Right, because 3K is 20%, so this is a solid 44% of our sell orders are from exports. So we don't need to create our own domestic demand, and trade like this hasn't really been possible in the game for some time now. Trade has just been incredibly weak. I think it was like around 1.4 was the last time you were able to do this, but 44%, that's nearly half of our sell orders are from trade, and this is when things have already gotten relatively big. Not super huge, but I do think that this is kind of an interesting showcase of the subvention mechanic. And attempting to kind of corner a market. There are a bunch of levers that you can pull to try and really get an enormous share. Now, I think eventually you will get, trade will die out by virtue of you owning a larger and larger portion of the overall global economy, and your economy will start to look less specialized. But at least in the come-up phase, as well as in multiplayer, there are now significant incentives for going after specialization, and we can kind of see that with our specialization in wood, which, you know, Russia has a very unique advantage for. Now, in terms of how we've done overall, just kind of like watching our progress to do with just kind of what we've been doing. We did subjugate Korea. We could probably reduce autonomy on them. We subjugated Persia. We've kind of pressed into Central Asia, really doing kind of like a little bit more of a thematic expand. It definitely would have been a lot more solid if we had gone for traditionalism, but the easiest way to do that would have been to activate corn laws at the start by isolating our market using an exploit, but we could just kind of wanted to play a little bit more standard. This would have been much more explosive with the reinvestment from laissez-faire, because this would have allowed our company, also if the company wasn't bugged out, would have allowed the company to have a larger share, and so this effect would have been even more robust. But already it looks fairly robust, and I don't really know. I think it's super close to a coin toss whether subventions are like good or not, like as in you want to actually do them. But the fact that we can de-peasant this quickly, you know, we're still on traditionalism, so this isn't necessarily the most optimal, but as it stands, we have over a third of our pops gainfully employed here, as Russia just 14 years in. I do think this is pretty solid, and if we look at the overall distribution of our buildings, we have 300 logging camps. We have over 300 logging camps, and like, we have 18 fisheries, which is something we actively expanded, 8 railways, or here, let's take a look at some of these like other ones. Can we look at all buildings? Okay, we have 20 textile mills, tooling workshops, which are actually pushing 27, glassworks 5. You know, we just don't have that much economy. We have iron 55, and then we just have this massive eyesore of a 300 wood just kind of sitting here. So our economy is just disgustingly proportioned to wood. If we look at our reinvestment, it can give us a little bit of an idea of how much of it is logging camps. We are getting 10K from the logging camps, and the next biggest is the financial districts, which incidentally are funded mainly by the logging camps. After that, it's the iron mines, which is normally an absolutely massive industry with a third of the value. So that's a pretty big deal. And look, even after that, Manor House is in Trade Center, and then you have to get all the way down to 1.4K for the tooling workshop. So we are so unbalanced towards wood, and this is not possible before. And we were already imbalanced before the subventions, but I think without the subventions, we can't just like be running this 6,600 export. That's 45% of our like sell orders. I think that the subvention definitely facilitates this, because otherwise we wouldn't get the people getting buy orders, and our own market price would collapse more, and it wouldn't be anywhere near as profitable. Remember, before we started the subventions, which is when we had like maybe a third less wood production or significantly less wood production, it was at minus 39%. That profitability was not going to be maintained. And the cost of our subventions is 16K. So it's not inconsequential, but difficult to say whether it's worth it or not. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. A little bit more of an exploratory one. I'm not sure we continue this run. I'm thinking that we are going to take a look at Panama and trying to do a bit more of a trade-oriented type of run, something like this. But if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, you know, do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a good one.